What's up, all you beautiful people? Listen, buckle up. This is super important. AI is eating the world. It's taking over. It's the most transformative technology that we've had in the last easily 20 years, probably since the advent of the smartphone in 2007, 2008. But really, the impact that AI is having in business and in life, just the world at large, is like equivalent to the advent of the internet. It is that big and world changing. And you've heard me talk about in previous episodes the importance of learning AI and how to implement it into your business so that you can take advantage of this incredibly powerful tool. However, I also, back in February, wrote something that was recently confirmed by a 4-month study by MIT. And it's something I'm very worried about. And you can go back and you can find that episode where I talked about this very thing. But effectively, the quote that I wrote on Twitter was, here's something that I've wrestled with a lot recently. AI has made me orders of magnitude more productive, but it has also negatively impacted my critical thinking, the quality of my insights, and my overall creative output. AI has made me a more effective machine, but a less effective human. And I wrote that at that time because I was wrestling with this. I was noticing it in myself that when I sat down to write scripts or content copy for emails, whatever, I found it to be more difficult. I found that my thoughts were more shallow. Well, today a study came out from MIT. This is called what is it called? Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of Cognitive Debt when Using an AI Assistant for Essay Writing Tasks. And honestly, the results of this are pretty scary. I'm going to give you 4 of the takeaways here. But effectively, they coined this term cognitive debt, which is no different than bank debt, right? It's no different than technical debt, which if you're a SaaS founder, your code, when you build it in the beginning, you slap it together and it gets the job done. But then as you scale, that code becomes a liability in the future. We call that technical debt. You have to go back, you have to improve and fix it, right? Well, cognitive debt is the cost of using AI for these complex mental activities. And what they found is that cognitive debt, by using AI, it defers mental effort in the short term, but at significant long-term costs. Specifically, what they found is that it diminishes your critical inquiry skills. It leaves you more vulnerable to manipulations, informational manipulation, and then it decreases your creativity. That's staggering. It's terrifying. So let me give you a couple of these takeaways. Number 1, what they found was that 83% of people who used ChatGPT to write an essay could not recall minutes later any quotes or any ideas from that essay. 83%. That's nearly 100%. That's practically every single human who used ChatGPT to help them write an essay after the fact, just minutes later, could not recite a single quote that they themselves had written. And it makes sense because you are outsourcing your thought to the machine, and it can feel like this collaborative process, but the results of this is that the writing feels soulless. And in fact, teachers, this is another one of their findings, the teachers felt that something was wrong when they read these essays that were we'll call it co-created through AI. They couldn't really put their fingers on it, but they used a lot of different terms like soulless or lacking depth to describe it. And so what the researchers found is that humans, they can detect cognitive debt in the work, though they can't necessarily articulate what makes it weird. So it's kind of like the uncanny valley. If you're familiar with this idea in robotics, the uncanny valley is that feeling that you get, the hairs go up on the back of your neck when you're looking at something that's close to human, but not quite. This is one of the reasons like animatronic mannequins and like robots have historically made people feel a little bit more creeped out, because it's very close to human, but something's not quite right. The facial mannerisms, the skin textures, something's not quite there. And so they call that the uncanny valley, where you get really close to very human-like characteristics, but you can't quite jump over that uncanny valley to make it feel like a very genuine human thing that you're experiencing. And so humans are very adept at this, right? And it makes sense because your brain, from a biological perspective, evolved in a very finely tuned way to see facial expressions in other humans and read into that. Because if I can read a micro expression on your face that says you're angry with me, then I can maybe be prepared for you to try to poison me or try to bludgeon me from behind. It increases my survivability, my ability to read your emotions. So we're very, very good at looking at things and being like, that's not human, right? Well, robots are now getting to that point where they're starting to cross that uncanny valley. And AI, if you look at it from like a video generation perspective, has really struggled with this in the last maybe 2 years, where the videos are pretty good, but you can always tell like it's something about the avatars, the human, it's not quite right. But they're getting really good now, and they're starting to cross that. Either way, humans still have this ability to detect something that isn't human. They can detect that it was AI, even if that's an AI generated thought or essay, which I found to be really, really interesting. Here's another idea. This one's really scary, is that the researchers found that neural connections from people that used AI decreased from 79% to 42%. That means a 47% reduction in brain connectivity. You effectively lose half of your brain's horsepower. That's wild. And if that on its own isn't scary and makes you start to rethink like how it is that you use AI, I don't think anything is going to change that, except for maybe this last takeaway. The last takeaway showed that people performed worse after that have used AI previously. They performed worse without AI, so they take it away, than people who never used the AI to begin with. So if you use ChatGPT to write your essays, write your articles, and then you try to get away from it and not use it, you will perform worse than the person who never used it in the first place. That's pretty crazy. Now, these are short-lived effects, obviously, right? Humans have a very what's called neuroplasticity. It's the ability for the brain to reorganize itself and regenerate in many ways. So if your brain can lose its neural connections from 79 to 42%, then it can rebuild those. But it takes time, it takes intention, and it requires you to use AI in a very different way than maybe what you're currently doing. So here's my general rule, is that you can use AI for researching, for collecting information, for organizing information, but you should not use it for the act of creation, because creation is really, I believe, and I said this for the last couple of years, creativity is the most valuable skill set that a human has in the modern workplace, right? AI, for all of its fantastic abilities, fundamentally lacks creativity. All it's doing is combining things that already exist and putting it together. Whereas your ability to take things that currently exist and then generate things that don't exist and put those together, that's creativity in the purest sense. But you're never going to have to work that muscle if you keep relying and outsourcing your thinking to the machines. So if you don't want to just become a more effective machine, but in fact you want to be the most effective, awesome version of yourself, the most powerful, potent human you can be, you need to do the hard work now and not just outsource the mental effort that's required in the moment to create something. So take this, run with this, be wary, be careful out there. I'm not saying don't use technology. I'm not saying run away from AI, but just be aware that the damage that this technology can inflict is significant. And I'm worried that we are going to see the general intelligence of the world, which is already lower than you think it might be. When you really get down to it, like the average IQ of a person is like 100. That's not great. I fear for what this means for humanity if we just become enslaved and outsource our thinking to the machines. So take this, run with it, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.